The rain started around 10 p.m. A slow drizzle that turned heavy in minutes. By midnight, it was a wall of water beating on the roof, steady enough that the old gutters at Pine Hollow County Morgue couldn't keep up. I could hear them overflowing outside the office window, splattering against the concrete steps. It wasn't unusual. The building's older than I am, and storms out here have a way of shaking it to its bones. Still, I'd never felt it this alive before. The lights flickered every few seconds. The air smelled like damp metal, and the hum of the cold room compressors had an uneasy stutter to it, like they were breathing in sync with the thunder. I was alone, as usual. My partner Alan called out sick earlier in the evening. Food poisoning, he'd said. I believed him, though I didn't mind working alone. Nights were quieter without him chatting. We had 5 bodies in storage that night, all logged and tagged. 2 accident cases, 1 elderly natural cause, 1 overdose, and a Jane Doe picked up after a car wreck on Route 9. Nothing unusual, nothing that should have made the night any different from any other. At 12:17 a.m., the lights went out. It wasn't a flicker this time. It was total. The room went black so fast it made me dizzy. The hum of the compressors cut off. Even the security monitor went dead, leaving the kind of silence you only notice when machines stop breathing. I sat there in the dark for a long second, listening. The rain still hammered the roof. The wind moaned through the vent near the ceiling. Then the backup generator kicked in. The fluorescent lights buzzed back to life, but not all of them, just a few along the hall. They flickered unevenly, turning the morgue into a stuttering slideshow of shadows. The air conditioner didn't restart. The compressors stayed off. I checked the wall panel. The backup system should have restored everything automatically. It didn't. I tried the office phone. Dead. Cell service was gone, too. Out here, when the storm hits, the tower a few miles north usually goes down. I grabbed the flashlight from my desk and went to check the breaker. The metal of the door handle was cold enough to sting. The hallway stretched ahead of me, flickering with each flash of lightning from the storm outside. Every few seconds the lights dimmed enough that I could see my reflection faintly in the window door at the far end, distorted, as if the glass were wet from the inside. The main breaker panel was in the storage closet across from the cold room. I found it by memory, flipped through each switch, all green. Everything looked fine. The problem had to be the generator. I opened the rear door to check the unit outside. Rain blew in immediately, soaking my face and shirt. The generator sat under a tin awning behind the building, humming weakly, a dying sound, like a struggling heart. I tapped the casing, checked the fuel gauge, half full. The meter lights were blinking red. Overload error. I was about to reset it when something behind me crashed. The sound came from inside, metal on tile. Heavy, sudden. I froze, flashlight beam trembling across the doorway. Nothing moved. Just the sound of the rain and the faint echo of whatever had fallen. I went back in, closing the door behind me. The noise had come from the direction of the cold room. The hall lights flickered again, slower this time, the glow fading in and out like a dying pulse. Each time the light vanished, my reflection in the stainless doors flashed for a fraction of a second. I forced myself to keep moving. When I reached the cold room, I noticed the temperature display was dark. The compressors had completely failed. The bodies wouldn't last long without cooling, so I had to get them back online. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was thick, humid. Without the refrigeration, the smell was already starting to rise, a sour sweetness beneath the chemical cleaner. One of the drawers was half open. Drawer number 4. I didn't remember leaving it that way. I walked over slowly, the flashlight beam skating across the steel surfaces. The tag on the handle read, Jane Doe, Sheriff 4521. Her case had been the car wreck, mid-20s, no ID, no next of kin. When they brought her in, she'd looked more asleep than dead. The bag was sealed. I pushed the drawer closed. The latch didn't catch. It slid open again, softly. I tried again, harder this time. It clicked, then slowly eased back open, a few inches like it was resisting me. I stepped back. Maybe the tilt of the floor was off. This building shifts in the foundation every winter. Still, something about it felt wrong. The flashlight flickered in my hand. The beam dimmed, then died completely. I smacked it against my palm. Nothing. The room went pitch black. Then, just beneath the thunder outside, I heard something that made my stomach twist, a long, dragging sound, like bare feet against tile. I backed up until my shoulder hit the wall. My breathing was too loud, ragged. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't hear anything except that slow drag. I reached out blindly and found the door handle. When I pulled, it didn't move. Locked. That didn't make sense. It didn't even have a lock from the inside. I hit it with my fist. "Hello?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the thick dark. Something brushed against my ankle. I kicked back, heart hammering, flashlight clattering to the floor. The beam blinked back on for a split second, enough for me to see the body drawers. Every single one of them was open a few inches. Then the light went out again. I grabbed the handle with both hands and yanked. The door gave suddenly, throwing me forward into the hall. The lights out there were still flickering. I slammed the door behind me and pressed my weight against it. My pulse was racing so hard I could taste it in my throat. I stood there listening. Nothing. Just the distant thunder and the buzz of dying fluorescent lights. When I finally got my breath back, I realized I was still holding something. A tag. A toe tag. The string was broken, damp with something sticky. The name on it read, Jane Doe, or 4521. I dropped it. The hallway lights all went dark at once. For a second, there was only blackness. Then the emergency lights came on, dim red bulbs above each door. They cast everything in a dull crimson glow that made the hall feel narrower, more alive. I had to get out. The front door was padlocked from the inside for security, but I had the key on my belt. I ran for it. Halfway there, I heard footsteps. Not mine. Slow, measured, coming from the other end of the hall. The cold room. I froze. The footsteps stopped too. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the hallway window. For just an instant, I saw a reflection that wasn't mine. Taller, thinner, head tilted slightly, like someone studying me through the glass. Then, darkness again. I bolted for the front door, jammed the key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. My hands were slick. I wiped them on my shirt, tried again. Nothing. The key wouldn't budge. Behind me, the footsteps started again, faster this time. I spun around, flashlight beam swinging wildly. The hall was empty. But the door to the cold room was wide open, fog curling out into the red light. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. For a second, I thought I had service again. The screen glowed, showing one new text message. "Don't leave them alone." No number, no signal bar. The power surged. Every light in the building snapped on at once, blinding white. The generator roared back to full power. The compressors restarted humming steady again. The cold room door clicked shut by itself. Everything was normal, except the smell. It was thicker now, impossible to ignore. A cloying rot that shouldn't have come from 5 sealed bodies. I went back into the cold room. All the drawers were closed. The temperature gauge was back online, everything in its place, except drawer number 4. The tag was gone. The toe tag I'd dropped in the hall wasn't there anymore either. When the coroner arrived at 7, the storm had passed. I told him the power had flickered, that I'd check the generator. I didn't mention the tag or the noise or the footsteps. He nodded, distracted. "Rough night, huh? Must have been a hell of a storm. By the way, Alan said he came by around midnight, but the doors were locked. You sure you didn't see him?" I stared at him. "Alan? He called in sick." The coroner frowned. "That's strange. He signed the delivery sheet, brought in a Jane Doe from Route 9. I looked at the log. Alan's handwriting was there, neat and clean. Under time of delivery, it read 12:17 a.m. The exact moment the lights went out. The coroner handed me a clipboard and told me to double-check the storage before I left. When I opened the cold room, I found drawer number 4 sealed again, new tag attached. Jane Doe, or 4521. Below it, in smaller handwriting, was a line I hadn't seen before. Handled by Martin Lucas. That's me, except I hadn't written it. They say you get used to the smell. That's a lie. It's not that it's unbearable. It's just that it's always there. It seeps into everything, my clothes, my hair, the folds of my mask. Even when I go home, it follows me, a faint trace I can never wash away. I've worked the night shift at Pine Hollow County Morgue for 8 years. It's a small, forgotten building behind the hospital, tucked beside an unused ambulance bay. We only get a few bodies a week, sometimes more when the weather turns or the highway gets mean. There's no receptionist, no other techs, just me and the dead. Most nights are quiet. I tag, I log, I prep for the morning autopsies. The hum of the refrigeration units fills the silence, a low mechanical heartbeat that never stops. But tonight, it feels louder. Maintenance came earlier to replace one of the cold room compressors. They left without testing the backup unit, saying it would kick in automatically. I didn't argue. By 11:30, the new compressor started buzzing, not the usual steady hum, but a stuttering whine that rose and fell like something struggling to breathe. I went into the cold room to check. The temperature was steady, 38 degrees. One of the fans in the far corner was vibrating against its bracket, rattling the steel drawer below. I made a note to report it in the morning and turned to leave. That's when I heard a click. It came from the drawer nearest the door. Number 7. A sharp metallic sound, like the latch settling. I froze. There are 12 drawers in total, 6 per wall. I know them all by number. Number 7 held an elderly man who died that afternoon. Peter Johnson, cardiac arrest, unremarkable case. I stood there, watching, waiting, told myself it was just vibration from the compressor. Metal expands, contracts, simple physics, but after a minute I still hadn't moved. Finally, I stepped forward and pulled the drawer open halfway. The body bag was sealed. The tag still read, Johnson Peter. Everything was fine. I pushed it back in, locked the latch, and went back to the office. The compressor whined again, a longer groan that crawled up my spine. I tried to ignore it, but that click kept replaying in my head. At midnight, I started updating the intake log. It's an old ledger, handwritten, no computer system. I flipped to the latest page and froze. Beneath Peter Johnson's name, someone had written another entry in small, perfect letters. Martin Lucas, ETA 0030. We weren't expecting another delivery tonight. I checked the coroner's call sheet, nothing. The handwriting wasn't mine either, too neat. I stared at the page for a long time. Then, right on cue, headlights swept across the frosted window. A county van had pulled into the bay. No sirens, no flashing lights. It rolled to a stop and idled, engine rumbling softly. I waited for the driver. No one got out. After a minute, I grabbed my clipboard and stepped into the cold air. The van's engine had gone quiet. I knocked on the driver's window. Nothing. I circled around. The back was locked, the rear windows dark, no one inside. The keys were still in the ignition. The interior smelled faintly of disinfectant. I checked the back doors. Empty. Not even a stretcher. My chest tightened. I turned toward the morgue door and stopped cold. The office light was on. I was sure I'd turned it off. When I went back inside, the room was exactly how I left it, except for one thing. The chair had been moved, turned slightly toward the hall. The logbook was still open, but the new entry, Martin Lucas, had been crossed out with a single clean line. I walked to the security monitor. The feed from the hallway flickered, black and white. At 12:22 a.m., the image froze. Static rolled across the screen, then cleared just enough for me to see a figure standing at the far end of the hall by the cold room door. The figure didn't move, didn't turn, just stood there. I leaned closer. The timestamp rolled forward, 12:23, 12:24. But the shape never shifted. Then the screen went black. When the feed returned, the hallway was empty. I told myself it was a glitch. The system freezes all the time. Still, my pulse was racing. Whoever that had been, they hadn't moved, not even to breathe. At 1 o'clock I heard another sound, not the compressor, a faint, irregular tapping, metal on metal. It was coming from the cold room. I stood in the doorway, flashlight beam shaking slightly. The noise grew sharper, faster. Tap, 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 tap. It was drawer 7 again. I could see the handle vibrating, just barely. I swallowed hard, forced myself forward. The temperature gauge still read 38. I told myself it was air pressure. I grabbed the handle. Cold. When I pulled, the drawer slid halfway out before jamming. The zipper on the body bag was open 2 inches. I felt my breath hitch. I yanked it open the rest of the way. The man's face stared up at me, pale and still, no sign of movement. But the tag on his toe no longer read Peter Johnson. It read Martin Lucas. I stumbled back, nearly tripping. The tag swayed slowly from his foot, the same handwriting from the logbook. My chest was tight, my head buzzing. I told myself it had to be a mistake, a mix-up, a bad joke, but the air felt heavy, wrong. I grabbed the office phone, dialed dispatch. Static, tried my cell. No signal. I sat in the office, watching the monitor, waiting. The tapping stopped. For a while there was only the hum of the compressor, then even that seemed to slow, the pitch dropping, like the building itself was exhaling. I got up to check the breaker. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed drawer 7's latch was unhooked again. The air was colder now. I could smell something metallic like blood. I stepped into the cold room and gagged. Bodies don't smell that quickly, but the odor was thick, chemical, and coppery. The light flickered once, then again. Drawer 7 was open a few inches. I slammed it shut, hard. The clang echoed in the concrete room. Then I noticed another latch had lifted, and another. All 12 drawers were unlatched. Every single one. I froze. My flashlight flickered in my hand. The hum of the compressor deepened, like a slow growl under my feet. The lights dimmed, then came back up weakly, and drawer 7's latch lifted again, smooth, silent, deliberate. I bolted. I shoved the office door shut and dragged the filing cabinet in front of it. My heartbeat filled my ears. Somewhere down the hall, metal scraped against tile, drawer wheels, scrape, pause, scrape. I pressed my back against the wall. The doorknob rattled once, violently, enough to shake the cabinet. I didn't move, didn't breathe. After what felt like forever, the rattling stopped. The compressor's steady hum returned, dull and constant. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty. The cold room door stood ajar, faint mist spilling out. By the time the coroner came in the morning, I was still at my desk, staring at the logbook. He asked if I'd had a quiet night. I couldn't answer. He saw the van parked outside and frowned. Said we hadn't had that van since last year. It had been totaled. Then he went into the cold room. When he came out, his face was pale. He told me the Johnson body wasn't T in its drawer and asked why it wasn't logged. I turned the book toward him. The entry for Peter Johnson was gone. Just a blank line between Tuesday and Thursday. He said something, but I didn't catch it. I left before he could ask anything else. That evening, I came back. I needed to see the footage again to prove it was all in my head. The security DVR was still running. I rewound to 12:22 a.m. The same image appeared, a figure at the end of the hall by the cold room door. This time I paused and zoomed in. The frame pixelated, but I could still make out the uniform. The tag, the clipboard. It was me, standing motionless, watching the cold room door. The timestamp read 12:22 a.m., the same time I'd been outside checking the van. At 12:24, the figure blinked once, then vanished into static. I sat there staring, unsure which version of me was real. It's been 3 days now. I haven't told anyone. I keep smelling that metallic tang on my clothes, even after I shower. Last night I dreamed about drawer 7, the latch clicking open, a voice whispering my name from inside. When I woke up, I was in my car outside the morgue. I don't remember driving there. I'm writing this now from the desk. The hum of the compressor is steady again. The temperature gauge flickers between 38 and 39. The logbook is open in front of me. There's a new line written at the bottom of the page. Martin Lucas, released 02:45. That's my name. It's 2:43 a.m.